Thank you, Dr. Matheson. Mr. Chancellor, Chair of the Board of Governors, Madam President, members of the graduating class of 2015, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Aujourd'hui, on me confie la tâche de vous présenter un trésor tout à fait canadien. Imaginez, si vous le voulez bien, un économiste polyvalent qui, tout au long de sa carrière, n'a aucunement respecté les frontières traditionnelles qui cloisonnent les sciences sociales. Tout comme Carleton, Gilles Paquet vivait l'interdisciplinarité avant même que le mot n'existe. Gilles Paquet is the quintessential example of the economist as social scientist. In the course of his extraordinary career to date, he has not only touched on major areas of economics and economic policy, but he has also worked with colleagues in history, political science, sociology, management, and law, to name only a few of the disciplines whose boundaries he has enthusiastically breached. He is one of the most prolific social science researchers in Canada, having written, alone and with others, more than 50 books, authored or co-authored some 300 papers in journals, edited volumes in conference proceedings, and delivered numerous invited contributions and technical reports. To that, we have to add his sustained presence in the media, whether in print, radio, or television, both as interviewee and interviewer, through which he has demonstrated that university-based social science researchers can have an effective voice in discussions and debates addressing issues of interest and concern to a wide range of publics. You will not be surprised to hear that this immense body of work has been saluted by peers and much more broadly. The type of recognition that his work has garnered can be illustrated by just a few examples. Gilles is a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, a member of the Order of Canada, and a recipient of both Queen Elizabeth II Golden and Diamond Jubilee medals. I could go on. His vocation as a social scientist began at Université Laval, followed by graduate studies in economics at Queen's University, and eventually by postdoctoral work at the University of California, Berkeley. He began his academic career here at Carleton, where he later became chair of the Department of Economics and subsequently Dean of Graduate Studies and Research, as the faculty was then known. In 1981, Gilles responded to entreaties of that university at the other end of the canal and moved to the University of Ottawa as Dean of the Faculty of Administration, a position that he occupied until 1988. Since then, he has continued to be a major presence at the university, the Telfer School, and the Centre on Governance. Not satisfied with herding cats at two universities, Gilles Paquet has also taken on leadership positions in numerous academic organizations. Just to give a sense of his involvement, suffice it to say that Gilles has been president of la Société canadienne de sciences économiques, l'Association des économistes québécois, the Social Sciences Federation of Canada, l'Association canadienne française pour l'avancement des sciences, l'Académie des lettres et des sciences humaines du Canada, and the Royal Society of Canada. And remember, through all this, more than 50 books, 300 papers, and countless media interventions. I could tell you how important his work has been to our understanding of the economic and social history of Quebec and French Canada more generally, or how path-breaking his academic work on governance has been and continues to be, or to highlight any number of other important contributions to academic literatures that he has made. But I won't do that. Let me simply point out that hallmarks of his work in these areas are creativity, powerful new insights, and, quite frequently, departures from well-established conventional wisdoms. Homo ereticus, indeed, as the title of an edited volume on his career proclaims. Instead, allow me to call attention to the fact that Gilles routinely elevates the level of public discourse around any issue that he chooses to address. He has an uncanny ability to take new knowledge that he and others have generated and express it in ways that are both accessible to non-specialists and meaningful to fundamental issues being debated in the public arena. For example, his interventions as a regular panelist on TVO's defunct weekly program Studio 2 were typically infused with scholarly insights and still managed to be instrumental in setting the shape and tone of the discussion that followed. More recently, Gilles' work on what he calls wicked policy problems, namely equality, diversity, and sustainability, has helped to deepen understanding of these issues much more broadly than in strictly academic circles. He honors us all by being here today. Mr. Chancellor, in recognition of his extraordinary career as a social scientist, his pioneering commitment to advancing the engagement of scholarship within public dialogue, and his dedication both as a professor and a leader of academics and national organizations, I request that you confer the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, upon Gilles Paquet.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Governors and upon recommendation by the University Senate, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chancellor, Chair of the Board, Madam President, graduates, honored guests, good morning. First, un grand merci au doyen André Plourde for his very kind words. Overdone a bit, but so. Second, my gratitude to the Carleton University community for the honor bestowed on me today. Carleton has played a phenomenal role in my academic life. My Carleton years, I can say I spent 18 years teaching at Carleton. My Carleton years have made me into something like a quality university professor, maybe. But if it had not started there, I don't know what would have happened. It certainly reshaped my view of the world completely, and the honor I received today is one more reason for me to be grateful to Carleton. I'm the last one of the honoree in this convocation, so after having heard at the many convocation ceremonies testimonies from extraordinary community builders all around the world, people who as the last speaker is, perform most impressively on the world scene out there. Allow me to, and they brought us obviously their inspirational message. Allow me to report from within somewhat, to beam you down from these heights to something more close to this place today. And allow me to report a bit on what I would call la grandeur of the Carleton spirit, on the burden of office also that you all carry from now on to live up to what you have to be as Carleton people. Now, in June 1963, before any of you were born, I joined the teaching staff at Carleton, fresh from graduate school. My education was obviously incomplete. I discovered this quickly when I came to Carleton. In fact, I would say that the first 10 years of my 18 years at Carleton, I would regard as years in which I developed a new capability in things that are not necessarily degree-like issues. Critical thinking, bold exploratory intellectual ventures, and gumption. There may not be degrees in these things yet, although, as I hear your provost and vice president academic, there may well be. They are about to invent all sorts of new degrees, and there may be degrees in these things later. But at the time I came to Carleton in 1963, this was the spirit of the place. Both Carleton students, teachers, and staff had a particular intellectual fabric that they were quite proud of. First, Carleton people did not suffer fools, did not put up with bullshit easily. They were always ready to subject pretentious dogmas or ideologies to the most demanding critical scrutiny to gauge their limitation. Secondly, they were also people always willing and ready to engage in exploratory work, research on phenomena that left them perplexed, however unorthodox these projects might appear to be in the eyes of the traditional scholars. And thirdly, Carleton people would never hesitate to raise their voice in the public sphere and to act courageously on the basis of their knowledge and convictions to denounce any message of deceit and disingenuity, whoever the messenger might have been. Many senior colleagues of mine who were on staff at the time in '63 would embody that spirit extraordinarily. Let me say a few words about one of them, who had quite an impact on me, and in fact, I had much to do with maintaining that spirit of Carleton. His name is Scott Gordon. You don't know the man. He was a colleague of mine who had come to Carleton in '48, had been the first chair in the Department of Economics, but in fact he was also a polymath, a philosopher, a true public intellectual. Carleton bestowed an honorary degree on Scott Gordon in 1992, almost a quarter of a century ago. Now in '63, Gordon was already an impressive academic who had written classic papers in all sorts of things like common property resources. But he was also, and mostly, in the eye of a young academic, a flamboyant public intellectual, a mesmerizing lecturer, a columnist in the Financial Times, and he drove a flashy convertible sports car. In fact, he was about later to fly his own plane. He was not the usual stern and austere academic that you would expect. In '61, this heretic man wrote a sharp, short book called The Economist versus the Bank of Canada, a typical Carleton book. It's a book that was exposing the deception of the then governor of the Bank of Canada and got the government of Canada to fire him. Gordon made quite an impression on me, as you might expect, as I came in, and he became not only my model, and I think a model for many at Carleton, but also my coach. Soon after my arrival on campus, while chatting in the common room at the top floor of the annex of Patterson Hall, this is where the economics department was then, he remarked to me charmingly, as he was always charming, that if somewhat ironically always also, that I was so ignorant of the real world of public policy that I might be dangerous to unsuspecting students. Something that takes one aback at 25 when you're not quite sure of where you're going. But he very quickly said that he would propose a basic remedy to this flaw, that he had volunteered me free to work with Dick Davis and Senator Kroll on the Senate Committee on Aging. Only at Carleton could one be invited to his own baptism by fire with such a Cheshire-type smile at a Gordon. In '64, the Senate Committee on Aging proposed the creation of a guaranteed annual income for the aged, a proposal not supported by the Prime Minister of the time, Mr. Lester B. Pearson. That brings us back far. But after an impressive personal national campaign by Senator Kroll, it became written in the speech from the throne in '66 and became law. This was my primer in public policy. This primer triggered a number of other fruitful forays into the policy world during my first decade at Carleton. All of this coming from the environment. I was simply benefiting from it. Some stuff on the healthcare policy in Quebec with Claude Gastonguay, some part of the reform of the unemployment insurance in the early 70s, some work on science policy with the La Montagne Committee. By the end of the first decade at Carleton, I had been through the best postgraduate education in public policy that anybody could ever have hoped for. This first decade at Carleton earned me the privilege to be allowed to experiment over the next 40 years, as I have been. The privilege to use my contrarian turn of mind to question as many pathological attitudes, organization, or institutions I could lay my attention on, and to design imaginative response inspired by transdisciplinary inquiries. I shiver at the thought that I might have chosen not to accept the job at Carleton in 1963. Now, the spirit of Carleton is not dead, and this is why I think it's important for you to carry on. And I want to prove it to you by a very peculiar event that happened about 12 days ago. On May 30th, a dozen days ago, I was a guest at a cohort of my former students, my first cohort of students, the graduates of 1965. They invited me to celebrate with them the 50th anniversary of their graduation. They're all now in their early 70s. And for some odd reason, maybe in the water they drank at Carleton, only a couple have died. They seem to have survived. And they all were there, vibrant, still imbibed by critical thinking, still inhabited by a taste for what I call virtuous scheming. They purported to say that I'd planted that in their head in the 1960s. Fellow graduates of this 2015 convocation in the Faculty of Arts and Social Science, I hope that you have somehow benefited as much as I did from the precious Carleton spirit, and that it will keep driving you for a long time. But also that one of you, maybe, if I can dream, 50 years from now, might gather with other fellows, graduates, to a celebration of their 50th anniversary in 2065. Thirdly, why would I want this to be? I think it will be simply your duty to check, as I did on May the 30th, that the Carleton spirit is still alive and well. A spirit that promises an exciting and innovative life, but also the accomplishment of great things. A spirit that is palpable today in the excitement of this room. Best of everything to the class of 2015.